Where's the money? Where is it? Bitch, I'm gonna break your fingers. Come on, where's the money? I'm gonna shoot you. You're both gonna die tonight. If you ask the average person living in Fremont, these crazy threats sound like words taken straight out of a movie script, because it's too easy to take our suburban town at face value and assume it's a perfectly safe place. However, these are real threats made by a suspect during a violent home invasion robbery that took place right here in Fremont, exactly 2 years ago. We are qualified to talk about this subject because Karina, Michaela, and myself have all experienced property crimes firsthand. Home security is a problem that deserves more awareness among the residents of Fremont, California, and there are easy steps that everyone can take to protect their own safety. First, we will talk about the property crime rates here in Fremont and the risk factors for becoming targeted. Then, we will talk about the actions we can all take to keep our homes safe. Home security is a multifaceted problem, so it's important to examine its causes to fully understand how we can address it. Let's begin by unpacking Fremont's own history of residential break-ins. I will start by sharing some anecdotes. 2 years ago, my mother and I were victims of a violent home invasion robbery. On December 8, 2016, at exactly 10:43 p.m., 4 men armed with semi-automatic handguns held us hostage for 1 hour while they raided our house. They bound us with duct tape, brutally pistol whipped us, dragged us up the staircase by our hair, and tried to break our fingers while they threatened to shoot us, in order to force us to reveal where we stashed away our money. Unfortunately, we really didn't have any money hidden inside our home. All we had was the cash my mom kept inside her purse, which they stole within the first 2 minutes of tackling us to the ground. However, they were unwilling to take no for an answer, and they were so angry about not finding what they came here for that they kept aggressively assaulting us until they gave up on their search 1 hour later. The head injuries I got from my near-death experience caused me to have PTSD, chronic post-concussion syndrome, and a speech impediment. During the police investigation, the detectives collected all recordings from the security cameras around my house. They took parts of that footage and put together this video you are about to see, which they uploaded to YouTube in hope that someone can help identify the suspects. When you're watching this, I want every single one of you to really think how you would feel if this happened to you. They didn't just rob my house, they robbed my home. And a home is supposed to be the one place where you can feel safe. How would you feel if people invaded that? Just barged in and tore it all up. Will you ever be the same psychologically? And in case any of you are still having a hard time putting yourself in my shoes, I'm going to walk you through the actual crime scene. As you saw in the crime footage, one of the first places they searched through was the kitchen. That's also where they stole my passport and told me to go back to my country. This is the staircase where they dragged us up by our hair. In the same picture, you can see some of the aftermath of the robbery. And once we got upstairs, they held us hostage in this master bedroom for the majority of the hour, when they tortured us for information. By the time the police took us to Washington Hospital, we were both heavily injured. Here are 2 examples of where I got hurt, on my hand and also on the back of my head where they pistol whipped me. But as terrible as my own experience was, the part that saddens me the most is that I'm not the only one.
It was around January 2015, and I was at my friend's house when a suspicious man knocked on the door. We did not open the door. He consistently kept knocking, and we were able to look through the door viewer and see that he had a bottle in his hand, which he looked like he was ready to spray. As we walked towards the kitchen, we heard a loud banging sound on on the door where I was actually able to see this man. It turns out that he had come around, jumped the fence, and gotten into the backyard. He used a ladder that he saw that was lying around to begin climbing up to my friend's window. We called 911 amongst all the commotion and filed a police report. Luckily, this man was caught the next day, and it turns out he was not from the country, but rather from Mexico. However, this event left me very uncomfortable, unsafe, and I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder for a year after this. I was also uncomfortable being in my own home and was constantly vigilant about looking at all the doors in our own house. Unfortunately, Joanne and I are not the only ones.
It was June of 2015, and I was at home with my uncle filling out job applications. I suddenly heard glass break somewhere in the house, but I didn't think much about it simply because I thought my uncle had broken something. My uncle, in fact, did not break anything, and he himself became suspicious. When he came out of his room, he saw that a group of men had smashed through our front door window with something, and one man was sticking his hand in the window trying to reach the door handle in order to get in our home. My uncle then began screaming at them and later chased them down the street, and unfortunately they were able to get away before the cops arrived. My fiance and my uncle's wife had taken both of our cars to work that day, so it appeared as if no one was home. If it weren't for my uncle and I being home, we would have been robbed of our possessions. The ordeal has made us feel uncomfortable and unsafe in our neighborhood. We are on constant high alert when approaching and leaving our home. Even though the experiences we had were terrifying, we are not the only ones in Fremont who have went through these things. Let's go over some news reports of recent property crimes in Fremont. According to the Mercury News Report on June 26, 2017, a male homeowner was out riding bikes with his family when he received a notification on his phone. He received it from his security camera, and it showed a male breaking into his home from the back door. The man was able to call 911, and police canvassed the area until they found the suspect and were able to arrest him. Months later, on February 7, 2018, ABC7 News reported that around 8:30 p.m., 911 received a call from a woman who stated she was hiding in the bathroom of her house after she heard a group of unfamiliar noises and voices in her home. The woman was hit over the head and thrown to the floor while the male was asking her where her money was. 3 of her family members, including her teenage daughter, were pistol whipped and threatened with a gun. By the time officers showed up, the burglars had taken $8,000 worth of their property and fled. The suspects were able to enter the house because of an unlocked door. On May 21, 2018, a landscaper noticed a suspicious male trying to enter a nearby home. He noted that the suspect was banging loudly on the doors and windows and was trying to find an entry into the house. Because of this, the landscaper had a neighbor call 911. By the time police arrived at the residence, this man was already inside the home but tried exiting when he saw police officers. The officers then sent a canine in the house for the suspect, who put up a fight before surrendering. Once he was getting booked into jail, it was revealed he had a current warrant out for his arrest over a prior home burglary in 2016. And most recently, on September 10, 2018, on a Monday around 3 p.m., a 29-year-old man from Fremont was returning to his home when he found a strange car parked in his driveway. The resident made sure to record the license plate on the car, but also noticed 2 men peering into the front of his home. The 2 men approached the resident, tackled him, and dragged him into the house. They demanded money and marijuana, which they thought was inside, and once they got inside, they also found a 64-year-old woman, and they pushed her down, demanding the same things as well. The male resident fought with the suspect over the gun and was pistol whipped during the commotion. The suspect had him in a chokehold, but he was able to get out and call 911. During the investigation at the resident's home, the police found ammunition that had fallen out of the suspect's firearm during the altercation. This suspect was later identified as Alexander Rhodes. He had already been convicted of other incidents, including robbery, burglary, and sexual assault of a child. The police eventually arrested him after following him in his car from Hayward to San Francisco. Now here are some concrete statistics from Fremont City crime data. According to the latest FBI data, Fremont's crime index is at the 28th percentile. That means Fremont is only safer than 28% of all other cities in the entire country. That is in the bottom half. Speaking of annual crime rates, out of 5,443 total reported crimes, 4,995 were property crimes. That is a whopping 92% of all crimes. In 2017, there were 448 violent crimes in Fremont. 205 of those were violent robberies. So if you are a victim of a violent crime in Fremont, your chances of becoming a victim of violent robbery is 46%, almost half. In general, you have 1 in 47 chances of becoming a victim of a property crime in Fremont. According to Mercury News, FBI Uniform Crime Report states that Fremont is the Bay Area city that saw the greatest increase in crime in 2016. Compared to 2015, property crime increased 7.9% and violent crime increased 24.6% in 2016. Finally, to quote the most recent FBI analysis, the crime rate in Fremont is considerably higher than the national average across all communities in America, from the largest to the smallest. Based on FBI crime data, Fremont is not one of the safest communities in America. Relative to California, Fremont has a crime rate that is higher than 56% of all state cities and towns of all sizes.
Now that we have discussed Fremont's crime statistics, we will explain the 5 main factors that cause homeowners to be targeted for home invasions and burglaries. The first factor is that there is a severe lack of communication among neighbors. People are not familiar with other residents who live on their street, and they do not have each other as emergency contacts. According to the Pew Research Center, only 28% of adult suburban residents know their neighbors. And according to a different study by City Observatory in 2015, one-third of Americans never interact with their neighbors. The second factor is a lack of community effort aimed at prevention. Before the armed robbery at Joanne's house, her community did not have a neighborhood watch for patrolling their streets to promote safety. In fact, mine does not either to this day. According to the 2006 Journal of Experimental Criminology, only 40% of the U.S. population lives in areas with neighborhoods which have neighborhood watch programs. After having such a violent wake-up call, Joanne's neighborhood finally started taking the initiative as a united front to look out for one another. The third factor, one you may all be more familiar with, is the bystander effect. People are not doing their part to report suspicious activity to the police because they think that they won't be taken seriously, or they don't want to be bothered by something that isn't their business. According to Professor Arthur Lurigio from the Department of Psychology and Criminal Justice at Loyola University in Chicago, the bystander effect is caused by a combination of 3 reactions. The first, the diffusion of responsibility when there are multiple witnesses. The second, social inhibition, where people are afraid of getting embarrassed for intervening in someone else's business or situation. And third, pluralistic ignorance, which is where a witness assumes that they don't have to intervene because nobody else is taking action. In fact, the day of the police investigation at Joanne's house, she later found out that there was an elderly woman who had seen a suspicious van the afternoon before repeatedly driving through her neighborhood, and on that afternoon that her house got invaded. Yet this woman was even able to identify the passengers in the car as the same ones on the surveillance tape, but she never called the cops. Had she helped report what she saw, she probably would not have had a near-death experience that night. The fourth factor, it's victim culture. Underreporting crime contributes to a lack of awareness and the need to take precautions. Victims don't always speak out, either due to language barriers, immigration status, or unfamiliarity with the American justice system. Therefore, crimes don't get prosecuted or publicized. There's also a general attitude of fear of retaliation, since armed robbers often threaten their victims if they try to call the police. According to 2017 NBC News activist Carlin Chan, a community activist in Manhattan, she states that many crimes still go unreported, which emboldens criminals to continue targeting a community. If you don't report it, the police don't know about it. According to Marita Cubanez, the director of strategic initiatives at a civil rights nonprofit group for Asian Americans advancing justice, for a lot of immigrants, depending on where they're from, there might just be this distrust of government and law enforcement and reluctance to engage. In Joanne's case, several daytime burglaries have taken place on her street, but she's the only one who has spoken out and contacted the police, simply because other victims are afraid that reporting to the police or calling authorities will cause robbers to come back. The fifth factor that causes homeowners to be singled out is a lack of home defenses. This is because unsecured properties will result in accessible targets. According to the National Institute of Justice, there are certain mistakes that increase theft risk. First, unlocked doors and windows pose one of the largest threats. According to FBI crime statistics, only 30% of residential break-ins happen through an unlocked door or window, as in Joanne's case, her garage. Other risks include overgrown yards, which are exploited as hiding spots, hiding spare keys to the house on the property, and letting mail pile up, which makes it look like the house has been unoccupied for many days. Finally, the biggest risk is insufficient lighting around the house perimeter and no alarm installation. According to the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at University of North Carolina, about 60% of convicted burglars have stated that the presence of an alarm system deterred them from targeting a home. On top of that, homes with security systems are without security systems are 3 times as likely to not have break-ins. Now that we've given some background on the prevalence of home theft in Fremont, as well as the main factors that contribute to making victims vulnerable, we will move on to a discussion about the measures Fremont citizens, as well as citizens in other cities, not just Fremont, can take to protect themselves.
Since you understand how severe this problem is, we're going to tell you about some feasible solutions. First, be proactive, not reactive, and don't be susceptible to the bystander effect. If you see something, say something. And care more about your neighbor. Even if Joanne was the one who got robbed that night, that doesn't mean that it can't happen to me, because who knows, any of us can be the next target. A lot of people are hesitant about calling 911, but the reality is you don't need to be. The Fremont Police Department accepts anonymous tips through text message, email, their official website, and even through Facebook. So there are multiple convenient ways for you to report suspicious activities as soon as you see them. The second would be to form a strong network and communicate. After Joanne was robbed that night, her and her family decided to start a neighborhood group text where they can update each other about any suspicious activities. And since then, her neighbors have reported multiple sightings to the police and possibly saved each other from experiencing the same trauma that Joanne went through. The Fremont Police Department also gives a ton of resources for organizing nightly neighborhood watch programs. According to a research study on crime prevention by the U.S. Department of Justice, areas with neighborhood watch programs show a 16% of reduction versus areas without them. Finally, raise awareness. According to the National Crime Prevention Council, it's important to petition the city police department to host town hall meetings to address serious crime. For example, the Fremont PD hosted one in December 2016 because of the violent nature of the armed robbery at Joanne's house. According to the Fremont Police official Twitter account, they hosted another community meeting back in November, but this time on the topic of safety during the holidays. The point is, informed citizens are always better decision makers. On the other hand, police recommend some actions be taken on an individual level. First, always keep your cell phones close by and fully charged. That way, in an event of emergency, you can call 911 or take pictures. On Fremont Police Nixle website for collecting anonymous tips, residents are allowed to upload 3 images along with their crime report. These photos can be given to the police for important information about suspects, such as their vehicle information, their appearances, or the suspects themselves. Second, learn basic self-defense and learn how to use pepper spray. These techniques are effective in a one-on-one attack. Third, educate your elders and children. Remind them to never open the door for strangers, even if they're dressed in a uniform. Because according to a 2016 ABC News report, intruders posed as door-to-door salesmen, construction workers, and Amazon delivery workers. So to solve this, ask for ID verification to be slipped under the door and ask them to leave if they don't comply. Fourth, invest in home security. Install cameras, alarm systems, motion-sensored lights, and even putting beware dog signs around your house can even help. Buying these defenses may cost money, but will always be lower than a cost of a robbery. According to the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting Program, the average robbery causes the homeowner to lose over $2,251 in stolen goods or property damages. This doesn't even count towards medical costs that you might face if you're injured during a robbery. In Joanne's case, she and her mom paid a total of $7,790 in hospital bills, which insurance did not cover. Fifth, be mindful of your home's appearances. Keep the yard free from tools, ladders, and toys. Tools can give easy access to one's home, and the Fremont Police also recommends that residents should discard any product boxes during the holidays and keep them out of sight. So once you unbox your new electronics, try to break it down and shred it if it's possible, and be sure it isn't sticking outside of your recycling bin. Leaving these boxes visible implies that your house is filled with expensive belongings. 6, make your day-to-day habits safer, like closing your garage door before exiting your car. Since the criminals who robbed Joanne's house entered in through the garage while she and her mom were unloading luggage. Also, keep windows, fences, and gates closed and locked when you aren't using them. For added safety, it's always worth getting locks with codes for each outside entrance. In addition, close your blinds, drapes after hours to prevent the interior of your home from being visible to outsiders. According to Everett Stern, a 2016 U.S. Senate candidate and a founder intelligence director of a private security company, states that robbers typically walk around the neighborhood to figure out which house to target. And if your windows and blinds are always open, you are helping robbers take a good look inside of your home. Fremont Police also recommends that if you're gone for a long period of time, rig a timer that turns on lights periodically during the night. That way you can trick outsiders thinking someone's home. And stating in a 2010 National Crime Victimization Survey by the U.S. Department of Justice, 72% of all households break-ins happen when no one's at home.
In conclusion, home security is a serious safety issue that we, as citizens of Fremont, cannot overlook. It's always easy to dismiss a problem out of sight, out of mind, until it happens to you or someone you care about. Now that we have discussed the history of property crime in Fremont, how big of a problem it is, and the factors that contribute to it, it is time for everyone to take action, both as a community and as individuals. If you take all the precautions that we discussed today, we guarantee that you will lower your risk of going through the trauma of a burglary or home invasion. Good luck and please stay safe.